I must have done like 15 takes before I handed it in. You don't sound like yourself. That was absolutely my tipping point. So here I am grinding up ingredients in my kitchen. It was like, you are comparing your thousandth rep of your former life to your first 10 reps of this.
Second act, lives beyond the job title.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second act. Today's guest has built her identity on being a high-performing tech leader, but behind the scenes, her body was breaking down with chronic pain, brain fog, to the point where she could barely walk. Eventually, she had to walk away from everything she had built, and today she's the founder of The Healing Habit, a wellness brand she started from her own kitchen, born out of her journey to heal and rebuild her life. Mel, welcome to the second act.
Yay! Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Mel, let's start with the before picture. If I had met you 5 years ago at a work event, how would you have introduced yourself to me? Who were you then?
Wow, 5 years ago, it feels like a totally different time, not only because we were coming out of COVID, but just because, generally speaking, I was a very different person. 5 years ago, I was hyper focused on my career. I had, at that point, been several years into building a very linear path in account management and customer success. So I was hyper focused on just being customer centric, about climbing the ladder, servicing my customers, and just helping to grow the business. That was my focus 5 years ago.
So I remember when we met last, you said, hey, I built a lot of your identity around work, right? When did you first realize that?
I think it took me a really long time to actually realize that's what was happening. As long as going back, I could remember, I had always been that person. I, am a very type A human being, and I get really excited when I'm building momentum. And for me, building a career in tech was exciting. I was going places. There was new technology all the time to work with, and it was just an exciting time for years and years. I don't think I realized that I had lost myself in that until close to the end. I've been out of the game now for about a year and a half or so. And I don't think it was till maybe a year before I left that I started realizing maybe that wasn't the right spot for me.
Tell me about that. Can you take us back to like the early days of your symptoms? What did like a normal day look like for you at that time?
Yeah, so I was an expert at avoiding doctors, I think, in the early days of my symptoms. So for me, I was so hyper focused on raising my family and performing at work. I am a military spouse, so I had gone through a lot of deployments, and I think I prided myself on being almost like Superwoman. Like I could do it all. Like I don't need help, right? So the symptoms had actually begun years ago, probably 5, 6 years ago, after the birth of my second son. I started experiencing flares where I would get intense bloating. I wound up with gastritis several times, which landed me in the hospital. But I kind of just thought like, well, I guess this is the way it's going to be. I knew that something like in my body wasn't right, but I would recover from flares. And so I didn't think it was anything too serious. In fact, I thought it was probably burnout, right? Like, nah, I'm fatigued, I'm tired. Maybe I'm not eating right when I'm on the road, things like that. I didn't really think it was a huge deal until it became a huge deal.
Point. I think today a lot of people talk about stress and burnout. So what helped you figure out, okay, this was not stress or burnout, this was something very different? What was the turning point for you?
I think, I'm an early riser. I love to get up early. I like to have my coffee and just sort of think about the day. And when I found myself being unable to get out of bed, that was very strange for me. I'm a person that likes to get up. I work out in the mornings. And when I felt like I couldn't do that, I knew that something was wrong. And then beyond that, there were other accompanying symptoms like, I was losing clumps of hair. And that to me didn't seem right. I do have a lot of hair, but it didn't seem right that clumps were coming out at a time, so it was like fatigue, clumps of hair. I started bruising. And then, beyond that, I was experiencing a lot of joint pain. Oh, I have always been a runner, and running was becoming extremely difficult. I had pain in my ankles, pain in my feet. It seemed like, I was always getting injured, but looking back, it wasn't injury at all. It was my body literally like starting to fail on me.
I remember when we last met, you were sharing this incident, right, about recording this executive video, pretty high stakes. Tell me about the story.
Yeah, so we were doing a series of videos that were going to be featured on the website, and I had done videos before for the company, and so it was really no big deal to me. But I was struggling this time to get it done, and I remember I must have done like 15 takes before I handed it in, but I had lockjaw so bad that it was hard to fully open my mouth, and it was hard for me to articulate the words. The interesting thing about lockjaw and what I didn't understand at the time is like it comes with a lot of mispronunciation. So I was mispronouncing words. I was so tired and fatigued and my jaw hurt so much that I literally like couldn't get through it and I didn't sound like myself. And that to me was like something's really wrong here. Like you don't sound like yourself. You don't look like yourself. Like what is going on, you know?
Mm. And at some point, I think you got a diagnosis for this, right? So you saw a doctor, they told you it was Hashimoto's and rheumatoid arthritis, right? So what did you feel at that moment? Like, was it like fear, relief, denial?
So I got the Hashimoto's diagnosis first. And when I first got that, my mother has thyroid disease. So I was like, okay, this makes sense. Like I will get on medication and I'm going to feel great. And that was not the case. There was still so much that was happening. It made no sense that I could barely walk. It made no sense that I was struggling to keep my balance. Something else was wrong. And so I was seeing, and still I'm seeing a great NP who is, my primary care manager, and he's like, something else isn't right here. Like, and if I were to bet on it, I'm going to say that you have rheumatoid arthritis. And I'm like sitting here like, I'm 40. Like, there's
Yeah.
no way I have this. Like, you're like, no, this is all Hashimoto's. I know that it comes with muscle fatigue and all these things. But he was right. So he referred me out. Was what they call seropositive or double positive, meaning I had multiple markers that showed that I had a progressive and aggressive form of RA. So when the rheumatologist called to tell me all of this, I was in like utter denial. Like, what do you mean? Like, I have this chronic, painful disease. And I have always been a very holistic person. I sometimes refer to myself as crunchy. I'm the person that doesn't even like to take Tylenol. And she's like, listen, you have to go on medication because if you don't, you're going to wake up one day and you're not going to be able to get out of bed. It was just like, it hit me like a ton of bricks because I had been going through the motions of this for a while and I had convinced myself that I was going to be fine. And the last thing I expected was to hear that I had this extremely painful chronic disease that you don't get rid of. So there was a healthy amount of denial in that.
Was that your tipping point when you decided, yep, I think I really need to stop what I'm doing and focus on my health?
That was absolutely my tipping point. The Hashimoto's, for whatever reason, I could handle that diagnosis. And to me, it was like, okay, I've seen my mom go through this. I feel like this is going to be okay. But when I realized I had two autoimmune diseases, something hit me where, I don't know, I came to the realization that I had been putting myself under so much stress and I had been so laser focused on growing my career and being successful and defining success in a very unhealthy way that I almost like had felt like I had brought it on myself, which, research does show a lot of people with autoimmune disease, it's usually triggered by a stressful event. So it changed my perspective on a lot.
So you were thinking of, okay, I think I have to quit or I have to do something different here. What were some of the conversations when you were like, yep, this is my next phase?
I had for years I had always known that like I wanted to do something different. I wanted to do something bigger. I wanted to build something myself. Like I feel like that was an itch that was waiting to get scratched in so many ways. And I in a sense needed some sort of catalyst to get
Mm.
me there. So I think like when I was going through this, I almost looked at it as like divine intervention, like this is it. Like, you're a hot mess. Like, you are, like, you're a total disaster. I remember thinking in my head that as much as I had done for my family and my kids, that I was somewhat of a distracted mom. I, when I was with my kids, I was always checking Slack. I was always thinking about the next big thing. Like, how do we hit our department numbers? How do I do this? How do I do that? It was very rare for me to just be in the moment. And So it's like when all this happened, it sort of came flooding to me that like I was maybe not living my life the right way. And I think my husband knew that. So when I had told him like, hey, like I think I'm gonna be out. Like I think it's time for me to leave. Like he was the first one to be like, I think it is too.
So what did you do next? So did you try, what are some things you tried
I've
initially?
always been, yeah, I've always been super holistic. I'm like mostly vegan and I I don't know, like that's just been my vibe, right? To be super healthy. So here I am quitting my job and I'm now on multiple medications and my body is a mess because my autoimmune diseases are getting in the way of me absorbing vitamins too. So like my labs look like a total disaster at this point, you know? So I all of a sudden find myself on like 10 supplements and multiple pharmaceuticals, which was interesting for me. But I think like somewhere in my brain, I was still like, oh, maybe one day, like I'll be able to wean myself off of them. Maybe I can read enough books or do enough things that this doesn't have to be the way that it always is, you know? And so I was doing things like yoga, I was cold plunging. But I went to therapy, like, and I made very specific goals for getting out of therapy. I love therapy. Like, I'm one of those people that I don't want to say I've had like a hard adult life, but definitely dealing with a spouse in the military um, is something like I've never felt before in my life where you're worried about somebody else's well being, but you're also trying to balance a household and your own career and your own life. It's like you're living two separate identities.
Hmm.
So for me, I've been no stranger to therapy. And I wanted to actually, my biggest goal coming out of therapy was I need to learn how to live in the moment. And I'm telling you, I did not think that was possible. And I kid you not, like 4 months into therapy, Cherie, who is my therapist, she kicked me out. She's like, "Hey, Mel, I think you're done here." I'm like, "What?" But yeah, it was a lot of that. It was a lot of just taking care of myself, painting my house. I know that there's power in coming down from things. So I allowed myself, like, I think these moments to disconnect from that addiction to momentum because
Mm.
that was who I was, you know?
So would you say that that kind of gave you that mind space to start thinking about the next shift? Like,
I definitely think that, and I've said this before to like people who have asked me the same question. It's like you have to clear your mind to figure out what the next step in your life is going to be. If you just jump from one thing to the next, like you are never going to find your way out of that cycle. So I always recommend, like, if people feel like they're at a crossroads, quiet your mind and find something that you feel is cathartic that gives you the space to be able to do that. Because if I had started like building the brand the moment that I had left the company I worked for, which is Recharge, like I don't think it would have worked out. I think I would have collapsed under the pressure. I think I would have went back to tech.
mm,
And I just don't think like I think I would be no different than I was a year and a half ago. But because like I truly took the time to be away from it and painting for me was that space. Like I could zone out, I could do things, I could let my mind think of so many possibilities. It was like the possibilities became infinite for me of what I could do and how I could see my life unfolding.
and I think you also mentioned the book Anti-Cancer, right?
Yes. So anti-cancer and the book The Last Lecture are like books I literally name drop all the time. I had been recommended the book Anti-Cancer by a friend of my sister's who had brain cancer in her 20s. And she's a lifelong vegan and super like focused on her health. And I'm like, wow, like Jen read this book. Like, I'm really sick. I'm going to read this book too. Amazing, amazing book. So it's written by a former doctor who had brain cancer and ended up living 20 years with brain cancer. And he has this kind of philosophy about inflammation in the body and how it's, you know, the root to not only chronic disease, but cancer, and it multiplies cancer cells. And part of what he had done to control his cancer was he overhauled his lifestyle and his diet. And so that came from not only like, you know, getting more connected with oneself in the form of quieting your mind, like we spoke about, but also through food and how food can be medicine. So I was so inspired by this book. And I had already been doing, you know, some of the things in the book because it was healthy, but there were other things that I hadn't been doing. And there were ingredients in there that I was like, you know, these are really powerful. I had already at that point been thinking, like, I want to create a tea. I want to create
Mm,
an anti-inflammatory tea.
mm,
But after I read this book, I was like, you know what, I want to take some of these ingredients and other ingredients that I know are good for inflammation, and I want to create a versatile drink powder. And that was literally like, it was like the birth of the healing habit.
So you were experimenting in your own kitchen, it looks like, with some of those ingredients, right? Like what, turmeric, matcha, you were mentioning a few.
Yes, yes, the healing habit. Here it is. Yes, I have it, and all of our ingredients are listed on the back. Yes. So essentially, what happened is January of 2025. Like I had, you know, decided not to pursue the role, of the job we spoke about in December. January comes around. I'm like, I had written at that point like a 30-page business plan. I'm like, I'm gonna start putting this together because like I didn't want to lead with like going out, finding a manufacturer and having no idea how anything tasted or how it made me feel without going on it myself. So here I am grinding up ingredients in my kitchen, totally unhinged and crazy because like you just can't, unless you have a commercial kitchen, get these ingredients down to a fine grained powder. Like it's not possible. So I've got like this chunky V1, I got sunflower seed powder that's turning into sun butter. It's literally like turning to peanut butter on me. But I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to start throwing this in my smoothies. It'll disappear in there, like the chunkiness. So I was doing that. I was putting in my coffee when I could deal with the chunkiness. And I did it for a while, like in my kitchen. And when I ran out, I'd make more. And I was like grinding down like green tea. Like it was crazy. But anyways, all the while I was interviewing manufacturers and I'm like, I
Mm.
got this blend, it's turmeric, it's matcha, it's cardamom, it's cinnamon, it's all these things, right? Like, can I make this into, a drink powder? And can you make it somewhat dissolvable?
Got it. Yeah. So at work, obviously, you know commerce very well, customer success, sales, accounts, but creating food product is a very different beast. How did you even go about figuring out what to do this?
Well, the short answer would be little by little. And that is it's such a silly short answer to give to someone, but it is really one foot in front of the other. Like people think, man, that's such a massive mountain to climb. Like there's so many people that are like, you are unhinged. I can't believe you did something like that. Like you're not a chemist. Like you don't have experience to do that. And I'm
Mm,
like, most things
mm.
can be figured out if you are willing to take a risk and put one foot in front of the other. So for me, when I was going through the process with manufacturing, it was like I was looking for a manufacturer that could act as like a full service partner, like somebody that could help me tweak the product if need be. Because again, I couldn't make it dissolve. And I was like, I need somebody to help me here. So I ended up finding a manufacturer that helped me slightly tweak and balance the formula because certain pieces of the ingredient are more dense than others, right? So I think like having their input and the fact that like they do this all day, every day was so helpful
Mm.
because at that point, like if they can get you to the ratios that they think are going to work for the flavor and just the consistency, then it's about sampling and taste after that. So short answer is one foot in front of the other. Long answer is you have to be really particular in, who you work with, ask the right questions and be willing to work through, I think, some pitfalls before you can get to a final product that actually works.
So walk me through, I mean, for something like manufacturing, right? What is kind of like the architecture or the layer cake? Like I'm guessing there's ingredients that need to be sourced from somewhere. Demystify that a little bit for somebody who's never been through this process.
Yeah. So when you're working with a manufacturer or somebody would call, like you sometimes hear the word co-packer, right?
Mm.
Like they're used interchangeably and they are a little bit different. Or they could do both services. But let's just like go with manufacturer. For manufacturers, like they're usually going out with their partnerships and they're sourcing the ingredients that you want. So like it's not like they have them on hand, right? You're
Okay.
like, hey, I think I want to work with these specific ingredients. Like I'd like your input on how these will interact together, what this might taste like. And then they will go out and they will source the ingredients from partners that they work with all across the globe. So like a lot of times you'll see things like made in the USA from globally sourced ingredients. Basically what that means is like they're manufacturing this product in the United States, but they're going out to all these partners across the globe, depending on where the ingredients come from, right? And they're basically like pulling them into their manufacturing space and they're helping you to actually like create the product there. So it's a very long process even to get a sample because they have to have the ingredients on hand And like people are making all sorts of different things. So they might not have like some of them right away. So they're getting samples of it. And then they're sending the samples to you. And then to actually go out and to source like a full order, like, I mean, it took me probably 9 months till I had a finished product.
And what did you have to do to vet demand?
This is like the hardest thing I've ever done. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it for anyone watching. Like, sometimes I'm like, I must be diabolical for doing this. Like, it is so difficult. I had experience from working in e-commerce and understanding customer demand to some extent, right? Like, I had access to information. So like, I knew what verticals were doing well. I knew what brands had great brand affinity and were gaining traction and growing fast. And so I feel like I had some information, but nobody can grow a brand these days without being on social media. And that is like the 1,000-pound gorilla out there. Like, it is so hard to master social media, but if you can figure that piece out, there can be a demand for a product. Like, there can be. Like, if your product solves a problem and tastes halfway decent, like, there's going to be demand for it. I think if your product doesn't taste good, but it solves a problem, there's demand for it.
Yeah, got it. Okay, so social media, how did you think about it for the healing habit? What did you do?
Okay, so if I could go back in time and do things differently, I would have
Mhm.
started talking on my personal account far sooner about things like inflammation, things like health, and things and what it is like to build a brand during the actual journey of going through the manufacturing process. Because
Mhm.
people at the end of the day are connected to stories. When you're bootstrapping a business, you do not have a massive budget. I can't go out and hire a creative agency. I threw 17 grand at this product, and that was all I was willing to do. I'm not going to throw my family in debt. Other
Mm.
people like I don't want to name names of certain brands, but they could go out and get $2 million in funding. And it's like easy street. You can go
Yeah.
hire a massive creative agency to go do all the work for you to get the best influencers in the world. But just for the average Joe or Jane out there who, wants to build something from scratch, like the most powerful thing that you could do, and what I wish I did sooner was I wish I talked about the process of this
Mm.
before going live with it.
Mm.
So for me, like what that looks like right now is like I'm the face of this brand. So like all the time I am talking about this brand on Instagram, mostly Instagram, like sometimes on Facebook, occasionally on LinkedIn, but I've found that Instagram tends to convert the best for me. So I am like literally the face of this brand talking about it all the time. I also have influencers I'm working with now, and I also have wholesale channels that I'm beginning to work through. We're going to be in our third store, hopefully starting next week.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you. But I am telling you right now, it is not like the old days where when I was working at a company called Channel Advisor, it's like you could go on and you could do, SEO and SEM and like you could get people to find your product and buy it. It's like, no, now they want social proof.
Yeah. Yeah.
They want to
Yeah.
know what's happening on your social media. How do you interact with your customer base? What do you stand for? Like they won't buy your brand unless they have that.
I think that's a very powerful point, right? To build brand affinity, people need to almost know the person behind the brand. It really helps. So you mentioned, hey, I actually ended up starting with like different wholesalers. What? How was that process like pitching? Was it like through connections, or how did you do that?
I'm like the master of cold DMing now, which is like I thought I started this year, 2026, and I was like, there's no shame anymore. Like, you want to build this business, like, it's okay if the business fails, but for me, I will be more upset if it fails and I didn't give it 110%. So for me, giving something 110% means like you got to go out and make yourself extremely uncomfortable. You got to go drop samples off at coffee shops and spot. And you got to ask people around you who they know and if people will be willing to try your product. That is it. Like, and that is what I've been doing. Like I have reached out to so many people locally who own businesses. Like some never got back to me. I've dropped off bags of my product, which our bag of our product is $40. And I'm like, well, it's worth it if I can get it
Mm.
into this channel.
Mm.
I've been doing a lot of stuff like that. I've been leaning on people around me,
Mm.
just looking for warm leads.
Mm.
I just did a workshop last night and that was amazing because I got to basically hand out my product. That was like the sample. Like my product was what people were sipping on while they were listening to this health and wellness workshop. And so it was great exposure for me. So it's like all these little things that you have to do every single day just to get people to know you exist.
So I want to unpack a little bit life as a solopreneur, if I can shift gears a little bit. How do you figure out what you want to spend your energy on?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm still figuring it out. We've been live now for about 4 months, and it's been a learning process. I think when you first get started, you have no idea what to spend your time on. Other than like packing orders and like setting up your website, you're like, okay, now what do I do? Right? That's what it is, because you don't know when you first build a business, like you really like don't know what you're doing. And so the best thing that you can do is try a whole bunch of different things. So every day looks different for me, but I try to focus on at least a handful of like activities that move my business forward every single day. And so what I mean by that is like, it's great to make social media content and so that people like know you exist, but it doesn't necessarily convert right away. And so, when you are bootstrapped and you're running a business by yourself, you have to figure out like, okay, if I were a VC investing in this company right now, like how would I meet my goals? How would I meet my numbers? And so I try to make sure that I'm doing activities that actually drive sales, not just build like, brand awareness or other things that you think are like great for your brand long term.
Yeah, okay. It's pretty messy and it's pretty experimental, and you have to like, figure it out as you go. Yeah. So what are some other tools that you found very helpful?
Gosh, okay. So yes, Shopify, I love. Klaviyo, I use for email. CapCut, I use for content. So that's a video editing tool that is like absolutely essential. Canva, yeah, like Canva Pro, you need it. Like there's no way that you could operate without Canva.
Mm,
And like you're starting a company and you're just by yourself, you better figure out how to be a graphic designer really quickly. But Canva makes
mm,
it possible. So Shopify, Klaviyo, CapCut, Canva, and then obviously AI tools like,
mm.
use ChatGPT, you're going to use Claude, and there's other ones out there. Like there's some other tools that I use, like that I explore and do like free trials with just to see if I like them. And they're mostly around like sharpening content, like verbiage, copywriting, things like that.
Remember last time we chatted, you shared like a very interesting experiment with like ChatGPT, something about asking it to grade you. Tell me about that.
This is why I'm still diabolical. This is why I'm still like a type A human being. Yeah. Maybe like if any of my former coworkers are listening or they know me, like I think they know I'm like a fairly no BS person, not only with like just achieving results, like, with a team, but also for myself. But yeah, I ran 2 experiments with chat. So I was like, one, I want you to pretend that you acquired me and that you're a VC. The reason why you acquired me does not matter, but I want you to give me all the activities that I need to do in order to be successful. That was the first experiment I ran. The second one was, I want you to grade me every single day. And then I want a monthly grade. And I want you to grade me on criteria that you think I need in order to beat the expectation of what a successful founder looks like. And like I had chat run an entire analysis on like the failure rate of a CPG business, which by the way is 85 to 90%. In case anyone's curious,
Mm,
high failure rate. I wanted chat to take my personality into account and what chat knew about me so far and how that would affect the weighting of my chances of success. And then I wanted a grade. Chat GPT started giving me daily grades based on my activities that I was doing, which required me to be extremely organized and to go in and say, these are all the things that I did today. These are all the things that I missed.
mm,
Give me a grade and give
mm,
me feedback. And so I ended up at the end of the month with a B plus. And I want to be an A player. I'm like,
mhm.
man, but it was great because it was able, it allowed me to be able to see like my blind spots. Like, what am I not doing well enough? And I realized some of the things that were holding me back is that somewhere deep inside me, like I still have a crippling feel of failure. There's a bit of me, for as like outspoken as I can be, I think there's a part of me that like is still a little bit nervous about building in public. Like I had this former identity of who I was, and I held that to a high standard. Now I'm starting a brand that has a high chance of failing. There's a little insecurity that's still there.
What were some key learnings from these sessions that you are open to sharing?
With ChatGPT specifically, yeah, I think I learned a lot about myself. Like I said, like I think the key takeaways for me is that like I am a person that gets stuck in like analysis paralysis. Like I think I probably would have been a great investor or someone who deals with numbers all the time. But I wonder sometimes if I hide behind that, like if I might go, well, if I just do a little bit more research or a little bit more, then I can ship a perfect result.
Mm.
When you launch a brand, you have to let go of that completely. I mean, look at all the early stage founders out there. I hate to say it, but like we're all a hot mess. All the early stage founders are hot messes.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think you can be anything but that in the early days, you're so wrong. And so for me, like I remember chat saying something like really specific to me. It was like, you are comparing your little like your thousandth rep of your former life
Mm.
to your first 10 reps of
Mm.
this. And for some reason you think that you can be at the same caliber. You think you can be as good as you were in your former career that you spent 15 years building as this. And it was like basically like get over yourself.
Yeah. That's like a light bulb moment. That's what I've been realizing through these conversations. Like if you're starting something different or new, you're like, hey, I should be at the same level of success. But the previous one is something that you've built over time, over multiple years. And then all of a sudden, it's not fair to kind of just compare that piece.
Yeah. But I think it's human nature. Like if you're a person that competes with yourself, then
Mm.
it's human nature to do stuff like that, you know? It's like you want to be the very best version of yourself, but you can't be when you're starting something like this, you
Yeah.
know?
So my question is, how do you define success for yourself?
So the way I defined success when I started this, and I think for right now, this is still going to be the way that I look at it, is if I can build a life where I'm around for my children, meaning I can take them to school and I can meet them at the bus stop at the end of the day and I can be there for them and I can afford to run this business, that is success for me at this point in my life. I'm still very sick. As much as like, like I'm in a better spot, I'm in a better baseline. Like I have progressive disease that flares up and down. And when I get very stressed, that still comes out. And for me, it's like I want to maintain a stasis where like I'm feeling my best. I am fulfilled in this one life that I've got on this planet. I'm taking care of my children and I'm happy. And it's not tied to making lots of money. made great money. I walked away from that. That didn't matter to me. I felt like that was vanity. So if I can afford to run this business and I'm a happy person and a great mom and a good partner to my husband and a good friend, that's success for me these days.
What are some, because you've been on this journey for the last year and a half, what have some highlights been for you in this journey that you're very proud of?
Oh my God. Well, the funny thing is the highlights are like they're always coming after some sort of like, major downfall. Like it's such a roller coaster, right? We got all the bags wrong when we first started this journey, like because I didn't know anything about packing. And so we actually we chose bags that were too small and they all had to be repacked, right? So like I remember when the bags got to me for the first time on the pre-order, like the product was falling out of the bags when you would,
Mm.
because they were stuffed so much. That was such a low moment for me. But a high moment was
Mhm.
when we got the bags right. Like when I was like, oh my God, yes, this was an $1,100 mistake, but this now fits in here perfectly. And this is stunning and beautiful and exactly how I envisioned it. That was one of the best moments for me is like when we got the bags right. Another amazing moment for me was like when I got my first wholesale deal, when I
Mm.
got a picture of my product in the store. That was a great, like,
Awesome.
I can't explain how insane that was to see my product on the shelves. Like, that was so incredible. I would say the Business Insider article, like, well, why does someone want to interview me or talk to me? Like, that was amazing. Like, strangers buying my product. The first person that ever bought my product was an absolute stranger. I will never forget this person's name ever. The second person was my mom. The first person was a total stranger. So it's like, and like some of my favorite moments that have happened in launching this brand, all the people who have rallied behind me. Like I'm talking people from high school and they came out in throws. Like I have this philosophy that like, if you've been a good person in your life, like hopefully it comes back to find you. If you haven't been a good person, then I can't help you with that. But
Mm.
I think if you've done right by people for the most part, like they will show up for you. And so to just see support from so many people that I haven't spoken to in 10, 20 years has been, I don't know, it's renewed my faith in the human spirit. Like it's, to me, that has not that much to do with the financials of my business being successful, but it has everything to do with happiness and well-being and knowing that like there's really great people out there.
I love that. Who would you say is like your strongest support system through this process?
There's been so many of my friends that have been so incredible. Beyond that, like, my husband's been great. Like he's supported me through all of this. My kids have been wonderful. Like I've caught them like drinking my product and not only that, like they want to make videos about it and
Mm.
stuff like that. My dad, my mom and my dad. But my dad in particular, like I grew up in a household, in New York where, it was tough love. We had an Italian family. My dad was a cop and he always pushed us really, really hard. And when I was growing up, like there were times that it was difficult for me to make sense of all of that. uh, But I know that like he just wanted me to be successful.
Mm.
I gotta tell you, like when I found out that this manufacturer was gonna take me on, my dad was the first person I called, and I'm screaming in the driveway, "I'm gonna build a brand," and he's hysterical laughing, and he's still a fast-talking New Yorker, and he's like, "What?" And I'm like, "I'm gonna build a brand, Dad. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do this." And he's like, "You go, girl. You're gonna do this." And, like, I gotta be honest with you, like, I call my dad. My dad's a realist, so he'll be like, Mel, there's a really high percentage you're gonna fail in this, but here's the thing, I know my girl. I know my girl's gonna be successful. You're gonna find something else to do if you're not successful in this." And I'm like, "Cool, Dad, I love you, and I love that, but, like,
Yeah.
now tell me how to be successful in this, in
Yeah.
this." That I call him a lot, and, my parents are great. Like, I think a lot of us are taught at a young age to give up on our dreams. I really do. It's like, you tell kids, like, "Chase your dream, like, you can be an Olympian, you could be that," right? And then, like, somewhere along the way, it's like, "Okay, so what are you gonna study so that you can go
Mm.
do this one thing?" You're like, "But I had this big dream. I was gonna be an Olympic swimmer, an ice skater, or whatever," like, and it's like, well, that's great to have that dream, but you need to have a backup plan. We're like
Mm.
literally taught not to pursue our dreams. And I
Mm.
get why. I really understand why we're not, because you have to make a living for yourself and your family. I I would encourage everybody out there to like run wild with your dreams. Like, even if you don't end up pursuing them, allow your mind to at least go there. Think about it and think about the
Yeah.
what ifs.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mel. This was great to learn your journey, learn what you've been through. And yeah, here's wishing Healing Habit heals a lot of other folks. Where can people find is it local? Is it online? Tell us a little bit about where we can find more.
Yeah, so if you're in Tennessee, outside of the Nashville area, our product is carried locally in Clarksville, so it's at Sauna and Soak. It's also at the Wellness Collective in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. But we primarily sell D2C online, so you can find it at thehealinghabit.com. I would say for like anybody looking to purchase it, this is a versatile drink powder, so it mixes with water, coffee, tea, literally whatever you already drink, and it's your daily dose of antioxidants. So it's really amazing for digestion, brain fog, pain, energy. So clean energy without the crashes, gluten-free, vegan, no fillers, no emulsifiers, made in the USA, and in a good manufacturing practice facility. I think I
Yeah.
got it all.
Yeah. 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 That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This was absolutely wonderful. I love what you're doing here, and I'm so grateful to have been a part of it.